You ever come home from a long trip thinking the worst thing waiting for you is an empty fridge only to find your whole life turned upside down? That's how it started for me. 3 days out of town for work, busting my tail so I could enjoy a cold beer in my backyard. And what do I find when I pull up my hedge, 20 years old, 2 years of sweat trimming and caring for it, hacked down to stumps like a crime scene. Limbs scattered raw wood weeping sap. No warning, no note. Just my neighbor, Vivian, arms crossed on her porch, smiling like she just won the lottery. She called it improving the view. I called it trespassing. The worst part, the HOA took her side. That's right, the very folks meant to keep things fair had my neighbor's back instead of mine. The whole community turned cold on me overnight. But here's the kicker: Vivian made one fatal mistake. She picked a fight with a logistics engineer, a guy who spends his days stacking 40-foot steel containers for a living and knows exactly how to build a wall. Nobody forgets. If you're watching, let me know in the comments, because trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Let me back up a sec. Name's Sullivan Drake. Not your average desk jockey. I move steel boxes the size of small houses, design port layouts, make sure nothing topples over. Regulations, load calculations, blueprints. I know all the rules. And believe me, I've seen what happens when someone tries to cut corners or bend those rules. There's a manual for everything. And as it turns out, every authority, HOA included, has a limit. So I live in a sleepy suburb 30 minutes out from the city, nothing fancy. You know, the type 2-story houses everyone waves while they mow the lawn. Annual BBQ nobody actually wants to attend. My pride and joy. The backyard. Not for show, just for me. The previous owner left behind a living green wall, a hedge almost 8 feet tall. Gave me privacy, muffled noise, felt like my own little fortress. I cared for that thing, pruned, watered, treated for pests. Made sure every inch sat squarely inside my property line. Measured it, photographed it, even checked with the county because I know how these neighbor squabbles can go. The rule's simple. If your planting is under 10 feet and inside your line, no HOA approval needed. Mine topped out at 7-11. I had the pictures to prove it. For 2 years, nothing. Quiet life, cold beers, work at the Port Grill on weekends. I kept my grass the right length, never picked a fight. The HOA was mostly harmless, run by Marshall, a retired insurance guy, so conflict averse, he'd rather let things slide than deal with drama. The rest of the board were the same, until Vivian Kassler moved in next door. She introduced herself like a building inspector, told me my mailbox was faded. I smiled, nodded, didn't paint it. That was strike one. You know the look, tight-lipped smile eyes that say, "You just made my list." Vivian didn't like being ignored. A month later, she was unofficial HOA enforcer, showing up at every meeting, complaining about paint colors, posting photos of trash cans left out an hour too long, started calling herself vice president, which isn't even a thing. Then she set her sights on my hedge. It started innocent enough, a text asking if I'd mind trimming it so she could see the hills. I told her it was legal, and inside my line offered to show her the survey. She never replied. Next thing, she's at an HOA meeting while I'm working late, complaining about visual obstructions. Didn't say my name. Didn't have to. I shrugged it off. Figured it was just noise, Vivian flexing her HOA muscles. Went back to work. Packed up for a 3-day job at the port, left early Tuesday. Didn't think twice. Should've. I got back Thursday evening. The air was off. Too quiet. I looked toward the backyard and my stomach just dropped. Where the hedge had been, just stumps. Jagged, uneven, raw. Branches scattered, sap oozing. It looked like a lumberjack's bad day. Vivian's window. Now, with a perfect view into my backyard, my life exposed. And there she was, standing at her window, arms crossed, watching me. When our eyes met, she smiled like a queen surveying her new domain. I was shaking. Pulled out my phone, took photos from every angle. No note, no explanation, no email, nothing. I knocked on her door. She opened it with that same smile. "Oh, Sullivan, you're back." Like I was the one in the wrong. The HOA hired landscapers to address overgrowth issues. Your hedge was blocking sightlines and hurting property values. I told her flat out the hedge was on my property. She had no right. She waved me off, told me to read the covenant, said the board agreed it was necessary, tried to shut the door. I asked for the landscaping company's name and the HOA's approval in writing. "I don't owe you anything," she said, and slammed the door. Back home, I checked the neighborhood group Vivian had posted about necessary steps taken for community visual appeal. Bunch of likes, neighbors calling my hedge an eyesore. They'd turned me into the villain, and I hadn't even known it was happening. But here's where Vivian overplayed her hand. Because when I dug into the HOA records, there was no vote, no complaint, nothing official. She'd just gone rogue. Section 12, paragraph 4. Any action on private property needs 14 days written notice. I got 0. Vivian broke the very rules she claimed to enforce. I called my insurance, no help, since this was willful destruction, not a storm. So I drafted a formal complaint for the HOA, lined up my photos, and started gathering evidence. But sitting there, I realized, sure, I could play by the rules, file complaints, wait weeks for the board to review, maybe get a check for damages. But it wouldn't bring back my hedge or my privacy or teach Vivian anything. That's when the gears started turning. I spent the next morning collecting evidence, talking to my neighbor, Mrs. Lyle. She'd seen it all: landscaping truck chainsaws, Vivian supervising. She told them where to cut, she said. But Mrs. Lyle admitted she was scared to get involved. Vivian had reported her garden shed the year before, cost her $400 to clear her name. It clicked. Vivian ruled by fear and paperwork. And now she'd picked me. I went back to my files, reread every line of the HOA covenant, every zoning law, looking for a way to turn the tables. And there it was: temporary storage structure, steel containers, under 14 feet, not permanently anchored, and under 180 days completely legal. The perfect wall. So I sketched it out: 8 containers side by side along the property line. 64 feet of rusted steel, 9.5 feet high. No permit needed, no HOA approval. 3 months of Vivian's view replaced with industrial chic. I called my old contacts at Garrett Industrial Leasing, scheduled delivery for Saturday morning, printed out every bit of documentation, codes, maps, HOA bylaws. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was building a fortress of evidence. When the truck showed up, I watched from my porch as the crane lifted each container into place. The sound of steel thudding onto gravel was honestly the sweetest music I'd heard in weeks. And when Vivian came outside, face pale, mouth open, genuinely shocked for the first time, I just sipped my coffee and let her stew. It didn't take long. She called the county, and inspector came, checked. My documentation nodded, said, "You're good to go." Vivian screamed at the HOA, called another emergency meeting. I laid out the facts, legal, compliant, within my rights. She tried everything. Argued it was an eyesore, called it retaliation, threatened lawsuits. But the rules were the rules, and this time I'd done my homework better than she ever could. The board squirmed, tried to broker peace, but Vivian's power was broken. And for the first time, the other neighbors started speaking up stories of her harassment, fake violations, threats. The room turned against her. "Marshall, our reluctant president, finally had enough. Vivian, you're suspended from all HOA committees." 5 board votes, and that was it. She stormed out, slamming the door. The air in the room changed relief, a weight lifted. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from her lawyer, full reimbursement for my hedge extra for damages on one condition: the containers come down early. I had a better idea. I countered: she pays. She writes a public apology to the whole neighborhood. The HOA adopts a policy that no private property can be touched without written notice and board approval. Oh, and the containers stay the full 90 days. She agreed. Vivian's apology showed up in the newsletter, awkward but public. The new policy passed unanimously. I replaced the hedge with bamboo, grows faster, taller, harder to kill. 3 months later, the containers came down, the bamboo was thriving, and for the first time, I actually felt at home in my backyard again. You want a moral? Here's what I learned. Every system has rules, and every bully thinks they're the only one who can use them. But sometimes justice doesn't roar, it just arrives quietly, paperwork and order steel containers lined up, and a grin that says, "Try me." Boundaries matter. Sometimes you have to build a wall not out of spite, but out of necessity. Vivian lost her view, her HOA throne, and 2 months of her life staring at rusted steel. I got my privacy back, and the neighborhood got a little braver. So let me ask you, where's the line between defending your rights and being that neighbor? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Drop your thoughts or your own neighbor war stories below. I want to hear them. Because out here, justice doesn't need applause. It just needs proof and maybe a few shipping containers stacked just right.